Hello guys, I hope wherever you're watching us from, you are having a great time. This is AfriPost and welcome to today's video. Now there is this term that I've always used, that Africa is rising and it is rising very fast. And this is the truth. We have seen many colonizers in the African continent starting to regret their continued existence within the continent because our brothers and sisters in Africa are waking up and they're realizing that these Western nations have taken them for a ride for far too long. In today's video, I want us to look at this clip here where President Macron openly admitted that Europe is dying. And he made some strong statements here that I want us to listen to. Let's watch this, then react to it at the end.
Have you noticed how politicians end their speech? It varies from country to country. In the US, they say, God bless America. In India, they say, Jai Hind, meaning Hail India. In France, they say, Vive la France. And in Saudi Arabia, they praise God and his Prophet Muhammad. Different words, but same sentiment. A nod to greatness, a hope that your country and culture lives forever. But Emmanuel Macron has chosen a different route. On Thursday, he delivered a speech in Paris. He outlined his vision for the European Union. But Macron did not praise or hail Europe. Instead, he warned that Europe could die.
Paul Valéry said at the end of the First World War that we knew from now that our civilizations were mortal. We have to be clear about the fact that our Europe today is mortal. It could die. It could die, and that depends solely on our choices.
Europe could die. It's a scary thing for anyone to say, more so for Europe's senior-most leader to say. So why did President Macron say it? What was he referring to? Well, broadly, two things. First was the war in Ukraine. Macron called it the biggest threat to European security. And second, Europe's strategic position. Macron said the EU is losing relevance. It is too dependent on others. In fact, let me quote from that speech. This is what the French president said. The European Union bought its energy and fertilizer from Russia, outsourced its production to China, and depended on the US for its security. It's hard to argue with that. Europe has done exactly that in the last few decades. But Macron says no more. He wants Europe to be independent, to show the world that the EU is not a US vassal.
We must continue to have partnerships with other countries. Yes, meaning building a Europe that can show that it is never the vassal of the United States of America, and it also knows how to speak to all regions in the world, to emerging countries, to Africa, Latin America.
A couple of questions here. One, why is Macron talking about this now? And what does he propose to do? Macron has always spoken about a close-knit Europe. He once called for a European army, so the sentiment itself is not new. If anything, it's more relevant today. Across the Atlantic, Donald Trump is leading the US presidential race. He is a known NATO skeptic. If he wins, he will not support Ukraine or European security, not the way Biden does. So Europe must prepare for a Trump White House. Plus, the EU itself is going through a churn. European Parliament elections are in June this year. Polls show right-wing parties making gains. They may not get a majority, but this could be the most right-wing EU parliament in history, which means less support for Ukraine, less engagement in NATO, and a possible reset with Russia. Even Macron is feeling the heat. Polls show that his party is trailing the right wing in France, in his country. So the president had to do something. And what better than an alarmist call? But does he have any concrete proposals? Macron did mention a few ideas. He's dropped his call for a European army, but now he wants to create a European military academy. He also wants a continent-wide missile shield, sort of like an Iron Dome for Europe. Then he wants closer cooperation with Britain, and finally more investment in the European defense industry. That last one is very important. In the last 5 years, around 55% of European arms imports came from one country, and that is the United States. In 5 years before that, it was only 35%. So Europe's dependence on the US has increased, and Macron wants to reverse that. He says the EU must be able to go to war without America. And how do you do that? By making your own weapons. France and Germany are pushing on with a new deal. Together, they will make battle tanks by 2040. On paper, this is all very good. Every country is aiming to be self-sufficient, so Macron wants the same for Europe. But there's a problem. Europe is not a country, you see. There are 27 members in the European Union. Many of them do not see eye to eye. They cannot agree on subsidies and tech laws. Good luck getting an agreement on missile shields. Plus, Macron is talking about a major realignment. Europe has spent 70 years in America's shadows. Their defense, their foreign policy, their strategy, all of it was influenced by Washington. So abandoning that will take time and investment. Nonetheless, the French president has openly called for it. It's now up to his fellow EU members to respond. Will they agree to this painful reorientation, or will they stick to the status quo? The elections in June could answer that question.
Le risque est immense d'être fragilisé, voire relégué. Parce que nous sommes dans un moment inédit de bouleversement du monde, d'accélération de grandes transformations. Et mon message d'aujourd'hui est simple. Paul Valéry disait au sortir de la Première Guerre mondiale que nous savions désormais que nos civilisations étaient mortelles. Nous devons être lucides sur le fait que notre Europe, aujourd'hui, est mortelle. Elle peut mourir. Elle peut mourir et cela dépend uniquement de nos choix. Mais ces choix sont à faire maintenant. Parce que c'est aujourd'hui que se joue la question de la paix et de la guerre sur notre continent et de notre capacité à assurer notre sécurité ou pas.
Now, while the whole thing is compounded with the American politics, I think much of it is because of the fact that the weight that they held in Africa is significantly reducing. And that means a good thing for Africa because they have used Africa for many years. They have stolen our resources within the continent and they have used them to develop their continent. What's your thought? Do you really think Europe is dying? Because for me, I think one of the reasons why Emmanuel Macron can speak like this is because of the fact that he has seen that the influence of France in Africa has significantly reduced. Most of the countries in the Sahel region have come up and said that they do not want France in their country. Most of other countries within the continent of Africa are also saying that they don't want anything to do with France. This is a wake-up call to the colonizers of Africa. They need to wake up and smell the coffee because Africa is rising, as I've always said. And if you look at the kind of development that Africa is looking at, the engagement that Africa is calling to have, we've seen the emergence of BRICS, which is really a game changer in Africa. It is going to topple our colonizers and to give our power to real partners that can really work with us to ensure that we also develop as a continent. This is something that has spread across the continent. Many countries are coming up and saying that they want to cut their ties with the Western nations, and all they need is a true friend like China, a true friend like Russia, who has opted to have development as the main source of engagement between the two countries and continents. This, for me, is a good thing for Africa. I don't know what to think about this, but if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Please also remember to give us your views down in the comment section so that we may also understand your perspective about the issue. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.